会议的环节，
we will
请大家继续关
come
注。
to
下一节主题为开放包容的亚太金融合作。
The theme is Asia-Pacific Financial Cooperation, Openness and Inclusiveness.
大家好，欢迎来到2023年亚太金融论坛关于开放包容的亚太金融合作争论坛。我是总台 CGTN 财经记者高昂。那么我先有请一下今天的嘉宾上场。欢迎。
First, I'd like to invite the guests to come to the stage.
欢迎您。那么今天参与我们讨论的几位嘉宾有
We have the
中
following
国国际经济贸易
panelists.
仲裁委员会专家咨询委员会委员陶景洲先生，欢迎您。
Mr. Tao Jinzhou, independent arbitrator, member of the China International Economic and Trade Arbitration Commission Expert Advisory Committee. Li Hongyan, executive chairman of the Green Arc International Alliance, executive president of the China Prosperity Green Industry Foundation, secretary general of the Economic Committee of China EU Association. Violante di Canossa, development economist of the UNDP. And also we have somebody online. Jing Ma, Chief Representative for Asia Pacific and Head of China Research Institute of International Finance. Welcome. Thank you for your participation. Just now, Mr. Zhu talked about the debt risks, and we can say there are still uncertainties in 2013 for the global economy. And the increase of interest rates will also bring uncertainties to the global growth. Against this backdrop, Asia growth will still be seen as an important engine for global growth. So against this backdrop, the financial cooperation in Asia will become more and more important. So I have a question for Mr. Tao. Finance serves trade and investment. So what do you see? How do you see the Asia-Pacific financial cooperation, and what are the opportunities? I think finance has two features. First, it is global, whether it is the Silicon Valley banks or UBS from Europe. Their volatilities will also affect the financial market in Asia too. So it is global, it is international. Second, it is penetrating, by which I mean that, yes, finance supports the real economy, and finance is important for all sectors of the economy, agriculture, industry, etc. But we've had 3 years of COVID, and we also have the Ukraine-Russian war, and we also have the interest rate hike from the United States. That all will bring impacts to the Chinese economy. But because China's economy is resilient, and also because the Southeast Asian economies are rising, so I believe for 2023, I am quite optimistic. But still, we need to see the outcome of the Russian-Ukraine war, the financial stability in the United States and Europe, and the inflation scenario. And also we need to look at the global factory of China, and also there are a lot of uncertainties. What about the opportunities for trade and investment in Asia Pacific? First, we can talk about investment first. I think Asia is still a hot land for investment. In the past few years, investment in China has been slowing down somewhat. However, investment in India and Vietnam is still growing very fast. You know, Asia is a global manufacturing base, so it will have a lot of trade activities. And globally speaking, Asia's legal framework is also improving. You know, I'm a lawyer. I'm engaged in arbitration, whether it is RCEP or investment protection agreements or FTA arrangements. That lays a solid foundation for the Asia Pacific. You also talk about Southeast Asian countries.
East Asia and also the financial ties and also the trade investment. So I wonder, what do you think the finance can play a better role in boosting the trade and investment opportunities here in Southeast Asian area?
Thank you. 30 years ago, the emerging Asia Pacific accounted for only 6% of global GDP, among which China accounted for 4%. Last year, the whole emerging APAC, that's the Asia Pacific excluding Japan, accounted for 22% global GDP, and of which China accounted for 18%. The GDP of the United States and EU last year was about 24% and 18% of global total, respectively. What that means, the whole emerging Asia Pacific, excluding Japan, is almost the size of the United States. And China's GDP is the same of the European Union. So the change in the 30 years is really historic. There's probably a rapid change in human economic history. So many people in the United States and the EU were crying global recession last year, except global recession was coming due to the Fed hike and war in Ukraine. However, these were very United States European-centric views, oblivious to the fact that last year's GDP growth was about 5% Asia-Pacific, excluding China, and 5.4% for ASEAN 5. So the contribution of APAC, emerging APAC, to global GDP was even bigger this year because of the growth rate will be higher here than either United States or European Union. So there's growth. In terms of trade, APAC share of global trade in FDI is also growing very rapidly, and mostly driven by the trade between China and the trade partners in the APAC region in the past few years. So for example, ASEAN became China's largest trade partner in the past 2 years in a row, surpassing both the United States and the EU. And more importantly, ASEAN accounted for 15% of China's imports. Okay? That's a lot. That's like 50% more than the European Union, and 3 times of China's imports from the United States. So if we include Korea, Japan, Taiwan, Australia, the whole APAC region accounts for almost half of total China imports right now. So it's hard to overstate the importance of trade and economic ties in the region.
Yes, now, Gene, that's really a critical point.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, at the same time, I will conclude rapidly. So given the very rapid growth in trade and FDI, so we need the financial support. We need Chinese banks, the commercial banks, policy banks, and also investment banks to support such trade and investment growth. I can go to details later.
Sure, thank you. That's very insightful. 所以马清先生刚才也提到了，包括像 APEC。
Mr. Mao just now mentioned the APEC and China's cooperation with ASEAN and the opportunities therein. I have a question for you. In this challenging context, how should China enhance cooperation with Asia-Pacific economies? Thank you for this opportunity. I want to say a few words about the economic and financial landscape in the Asia-Pacific. In the 21st century, China is making enormous contribution to the entire humanity. We are here talking about Asia-Pacific financial cooperation. When you look at Asia-Pacific as a name, as a geographical term, in the Asia-Pacific, it is a vast region with bountiful resources. It has a diversity of economic structures. All this will make it possible for economic growth in the region. So I believe Asia-Pacific economic growth is vital. It will give a strong boost to the world economic growth. Just now, people mentioned the Ukraine-Russia conflict. That involves geopolitical factors. We see geopolitical conflicts and confrontation as we see in the Ukraine crisis. We call for open cooperation in the Asia-Pacific. This is a vision for all of us. It is something that China hopes to achieve in the future. In recent years, there's been a greater call for environmental sustainability. And very soon we will have the World Planet Day. China has been very committed to environmental protection. Mr. Xi Jinping has made important restrictions on protecting the environment. In the previous session, Mr. Kevin Chu gave an account of the global economic situation. In green industries, in green technology, and in green finance, we must build synergy among the three sides. A green economy needs to be supported by green finance. Thank you. You made a very good point. Asia-Pacific cooperation is not only important for China's carbon neutrality goals, it is also important for the global response to climate change.
I know UNDP has been working in this area to boosting green finance and also climate crisis. So, what do you think are some new trends in the green finance, the green transition of the finance sector in the area, and also what role has the UNDP played during the process? Thank you very much for this for the invitation, and thank you. Very pleased to be here. I cannot agree more with our fellow speakers about the importance of Asia Pacific, China, and financial cooperation. And this is because there is plenty of opportunity, economically viable in the region. There have been estimated something around $6.6 trillion to potential opportunity investments to align to the SDGs. I think what UNDP brings to the table, being a United Nations agency, is the push to broaden a bit further, go beyond green, and having a bit more of a holistic approach to the whole SDGs. So considering the sustainability point of view and the push for high quality development that is embedded into Chinese vision, long-term visions, and in the SDGs and 2030 agendas,
that tackles economically sustainable, environmentally sustainable, but also socially sustainable. And in practice, what this means, sometimes it's also tackling certain challenges like lack of data, lack of awareness, and the proliferation of standards and taxonomies that we have seen so far. So here in China specifically, what we are working at different initiatives, one of which is investor maps. This is a global initiative that is trying to map at the local level investment opportunities that are economically viable, so they do make money, but are also sustainably along the SDGs viable. And using big data, AI, and all the technology that we have now at our available, we are mapping in different sectors where these opportunities could be, raising awareness and trying to bridge the gap between the need to invest in certain areas and the supply of money that would like to go in sustainable and SDG-aligned investment opportunities. So in China, for instance, we have agriculture, health, renewable, and the circular economy. That's the areas we looked at. And then we have the same initiative being applied in 24 countries. So again, trying to harmonize system and methodology for investors to cross-border investment opportunity and boost that.
Thank you, that's very insightful. And 我认为就是现在一个很重要的问题，也是在亚太区域合作是将会如何助力世界经济的恢复。So Jean, we know that Asia has a very critical role to play in boosting the world's economic recovery. So what do you think there are opportunities, and how will the area's development really help to combat with all these risks, while at the same time to put more vitality into the world economic development?
Good question. Earlier, I mentioned that ASEAN became China's largest trade partner for 3 years in a row. So the rising trade and investment relationship within the APEC, especially emerging APEC, we're not talking about Japan, Australia, we're talking about emerging APEC, is not only the result of higher GDP, but more importantly, the result of profound change in the global supply chain. So in the past, China is finding the final assembly points for global trade. China imports parts and components from Korea, from Japan, from Taiwan, put them together as a final assembly line, and ship them to the rich consumers in the United States and in Europe. This has changed since 2018 because of the U.S. trade war on China. So exporting direct from China to the United States become less competitive during 25 tariff, which is still in place after almost 4 years or 3 years. So even though people don't talk about it anymore, so China right now has to ship, first imports energy and raw commodities from all over the world, from Brazil and also from ASEAN countries. Then make it into parts components and send parts components to places like Vietnam and even Mexico, to be assembled for export to the United States. That's why you're seeing very rapid growth in China's investment in Vietnam and in Mexico, from almost zero a few years ago. So Washington is seeking the supply chain resilience by friendshoring and nearshoring in the recent years. But the result is that the supply chain is becoming longer and more complicated. But that's the fact. In this case, the Chinese banks and also the other banks in Asia need to find such a supply chain migration. So I'll give you one example. So for such economic growth and supply chain migration, we need infrastructure. The infrastructure construction is sorely needed in ASEAN region. However, they're expensive, they're risky. They are too longer term and too risky for commercial banks to finance them, especially for commercial banks in ASEAN, because they're relatively small. So one idea is so-called a blended finance. That is to blend the resources from commercial banks with the funding from multilateral lending institutions. It's a World Bank, ADB, AIIB, and New Development Bank. Because in multilateral policy banks, they are more experienced in infrastructure. You can do a better due diligence. Then by doing so-called blended finance, it also can bring in more resources, more fundings from private commercial banks. So we can serve this purpose to build a better infrastructure in impact region. There are many such ideas we can explore to deepen the financial integration and to deepen the collaboration in the APEC region and stimulate growth in the region.
Yes, Jean, like you said, that deepening the financial cooperation and also integration of the Asia-Pacific area is very important. 所以陶律师，我也想请问您，在供应链方面，包括在整个稳定产业链供应链
So, Tom, I have a question for you. In supply chain, you said that there's a lot of to offer each other between China and the Asia Pacific and ASEAN. Asia Pacific cooperation is most important for tackling the recession in the world. So, how do you see the role of the Asia Pacific cooperation? Asia is the factory of the world, whether it is the mainland of China or Taiwan, India, or other Southeast Asian countries. All these economies have important roles to play in stabilizing the supply chain. But we cannot separate it from the global context because of chips, because of U.S. long-arm jurisdiction. There has been interruption or disruption in the supply of chips or in the supply chain. So we see chaos, we see disruptions. The stability of the supply chain depends on the global political context. So this is a two-way street. There is a great degree of interdependence. That's why we need to be open and inclusive. The new government of China says that must be more open. The Asian market cannot be isolated, cannot be closed. Rather, the Asian market is a piece of puzzle in the entire global context. There must be synergy between the Asian market and the global market. In the process of opening up, what are the uncertainties and how to tackle those uncertainties? Indeed, there are many uncertainties. For example, the crisis in Ukraine, which is a big source of uncertainty. There are also competition between institutions and systems. And green trade barriers are also out there as a source of instability. Non-tariff barriers.
谢谢您。那李会长，我也想请问您，在2023年，您认为亚太地区的金融合作会对于整个促进世界经济的恢复、应对多种的不确定性发挥一个什么样的作用？
你提到这个问题啊，这是一个大的一个问题，因为现在目前来讲，从我们世界格局来看，特别是俄乌战争对整个世界经济都影响很大。因为我现在主要的工作的对象主要是以绿色产业为这个标杆。 您谈到这个世界未来经济的发展，肯定是与绿色转型、与绿色金融结合在一起。因为我们现在整个这几年自然灾害频发，包括我们疫情在中国也算是刚刚结束吧，这一系列的这些自然灾害，都关乎着我们人类的一些行为。我们这几年一直在倡导世界一国，地球一家。因为这个口号是和全世界都能同步，也很好能被人所理解。如果我们要都有这种心态，我想我们可能战争也会逐步的去减少，或者没有这种战争。所以说，金融的业态和我们今后绿色发展一定是密不可分的。因为我们说看到我们现在地球这么多年，真是受到我们人类的大的一个劫难。但是反过来也讲，自然也对我们人类也进行了一种惩罚。所以说，我们想到未来的金融和绿色产业的转型是密不可分的。所以说，我们在未来的这种制定我们，特别是我们在中国目前总书记现在就是在我们国策上把绿色发展作为我们的首要要务。我们举起了绿色巴黎气候的大旗，引领世界的发展。
Paris Agreement, which will be the guiding document that will also lead our future green development. I believe in the future, finance and green development are the areas where China will make a great contribution, and we need to contribute to it, and we need to protect our Mother Earth.
About China's role of boosting green finance and also to combating climate crisis and boosting the green development for the world. And another keyword actually here is cooperation. So I wonder what role has the UNDP played in fostering cooperation among all the stakeholders here in China and also in the Asia Pacific area in the area of sustainable finance?
So cooperation is behind everything we do. And trying to collaboration. So UNDP, as all the other United Nations agencies, offers a platform to convey and bring people around the table to exchange, to share lessons. And this is something we try to do in any initiative we actually do in China as well as elsewhere. So we organize high-level events where we're bridging gaps of information, bringing experts, Chinese experts outside and international experts into China. UNDP is also involved in the G20 as holding the secretariat of the Sustainable Finance Working Group, for instance. And again, there is our role is the one to facilitate dialogues, which is particularly important because of all the reasons that have been highlighted earlier on and the tough and difficult geopolitical situation we are currently facing. So UNDP, being backed by all the 190 member states, offers a fairly neutral space to proceed into technical discussions that can promote, in this specific case, sustainable finance and sustainable finance cooperation in China as well as in Asia Pacific.
So what's your outlook for 2023 in terms of promoting sustainable finance and also the cooperation?
I think it's quite optimistic. The fact that China opened up and the growth outlook is definitely more rosier than it was 2 or 3 months ago. And basically, it's a good signal that allows us to reoperate in an environment where dialogue is possible and sharing expertise. Specifically, we are working on very different topics, still promoting standards, sustainable standards across the market with regulators. We have a very good relationship with the NAFMI. And
for bond issuers.
Exactly, for bond issuance, for a guideline on social and sustainability bond issuance there. We're also looking at more frontier issues like transition finance. So how do we finance not only pure green sectors, but also the sectors that will have to be greener in the future, or the so-called hard-to-abate sectors, like agriculture, for instance, to inform through evidence-based research, policy making in the future.
我再补充一句啊，就是说绿色金融。
I have something to add. Actually, green financing requires the banks to do enough due diligence on green development before should not get any financing. That is a basic principle. On the other hand, all countries are developing their economies. The Russia-Ukraine war have cut the natural gas supplies, so probably coal will have to be used. So you need to issue loans to them. If you do not issue loans to them, what about the economy? So the political and economic goals sometimes are in conflict with the green goals. So how to strike a balance? It is really difficult. That will depend on the implementation of the Paris Agreement. Is it moving forward or moving backward? What about the carbon neutrality goal by 2028 or by 2030? Because it is a benefit to the Earth. However, different countries, due to different reasons, probably do not want to move forward. Probably they will go backward a little bit. So financing is really a big challenge. In different countries, because of different reasons, for example, the election system, of course they hope that their people will enjoy a higher living standards, their economy will grow faster. So probably they are not really cared about whether it is very green or not.
Between the green transition and at the same time the economic development. I wonder what's your take on this? Mr. Tao put the finger in the most hot potatoes that we have on the table at this moment in time. But I think it's a key question, correct? And it's a question between the short-term outlook and priorities of delivering jobs and keep the livelihood, and the long-term environmental imperatives that we are facing because of climate change. Unfortunately, I don't have the answer, but I think what is key for policymakers is to be very well informed when they do act and decide, as well as for investors. And this implies the need for better data disclosure, better data management from all stakeholders. But it also, so it's, and I think also the understanding and increasing awareness that there are plenty of opportunities, right? In many parts of the world, renewables are now cheaper than coal. And they are the most economically viable option out there. So we don't have necessarily to build another coal plant to deliver energy to the people and to the most vulnerable. So it's really looking what is the best options and out there. And a lot of time, it does imply greener solutions, nature-based solutions, and solutions that do take into account vulnerable groups. And last point is, as an investor, you also have to keep in mind that you are investing in stranded assets. So that's also a key part of the equation that should be considered.
That's very critical. So Jean, I have one last question for you. We talk about the green finance and also the risks we're currently facing, like inflationary pressure and the monetary policy. So what's your outlook for the economic recovery and also in the Asia-Pacific region, the cooperation in 2023?
I think I'm pretty optimistic about the growth prospect in Asia-Pacific region. We're on a much better footing than the economy in the United States or Europe. We don't have the war. We don't have there's high inflation. There is some inflation here, but not as high as in the United States. And moreover, in managing of monetary policy, the emerging market central banks, I think, did a much better job than the Federal Reserve. because we started hike interest rate a lot earlier than Federal Reserve. So for the most emerging central banks, like Bank of Korea, we are almost at the end of interest hiking cycle. In fact, Vietnam just cut interest rate last week. Okay, but however, at the other side of the Pacific, the interest hike in the United States, especially Europe, nowhere the end is nowhere in sight, despite the banking crisis over there. So I'm pretty upbeat about the growth in the Asia-Pacific region. But I want to give you one caution. That is, we need better cooperation. The poorer places in the region need to invest from China. But we need to be careful how we do such cooperation. I want to tell you something, probably will make the audience uncomfortable. A friend of mine did a survey in Indonesia about Chinese investment in Indonesia. One question is, do you welcome Chinese investment in Indonesia? Another question is that, have you dealt or worked for Chinese companies or dealt with Chinese investors, right? There were a very long questionnaire. He found more than 60% of people in Indonesia welcome investment from China. That's great news. Okay? They need the money, China needs the resources, the synergy there. That's great news. The disturbing part is that he found out who said they welcome Chinese investment actually have never worked for a Chinese company before. Okay? And for those who have worked for a Chinese factory, the mine owned by Chinese investors, the answer is predominantly negative. They don't want Chinese investment anymore. So this was very shocking. So he had to follow up with more interviews. So why you do not want Chinese investment once you work for a Chinese company, Chinese owned mines, is that the answer is that, well, the Chinese business people and Chinese do not respect us. They do not respect our culture, do not respect our religion, because they are rich, we are poor. They do not treat us equal. I think this will make a lot of people in the audience uncomfortable, but that is the truth. Okay? If we want deeper cooperation, I think that's a theme of the whole conference, right? We spend so much money on this conference. So that is our goal, that's our aim. Well, Chinese investors and the policymakers need to go out, talk to the world. 3 years isolation is too long. But you're not at a table, you're on the menu. But when you go out, do business with the world, you have to carry with yourself the humility, the humbleness, and respect. I will end my remark here. Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. It's a very thoughtful caution, and I think investors need to consider about this when they trying to make more investment, as you mentioned, deepen the cooperation. And thank you so much for your good input, and please feel free to leave if you need to be heard about this. Thank you so much.
Can I give one departing remark? Because I have to leave early. I have to leave early because I have another meeting. Thank you so much for the opportunity. It's great. I am sitting in Singapore. So Singapore right now has become increasingly important center for fixed income trading, FX trading, commodity oil trading, wealth management, fintech, green finance, sustainable finance. Okay. For Chinese financial institutions, you want to visit Singapore, reach out to us. We'll be honored to be of your service. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jim. 陶律师呢，我也想请问您，Jim 先生刚才提到了一个很重要的，就是在做投资的时候，其实如何尊重当地的生态。
He said about the respect for local environment, for local society, which is very important for deeper cooperation. What is your view on that? In the past decades, in green development and in the environment, people have a stronger awareness. In the 1990s, many foreign companies come to China to invest, and the Chinese people said that environmental pollution is no problem. But foreign investors said, no, we cannot do that. What if the Chinese government one day started to tighten the restrictions on pollution. And the Chinese people back then could not understand that. But now, today, in hindsight, we see that if those projects went ahead, and they may be shut down today in today's regulatory environment. Now, the Chinese government, the Chinese companies start to pay more attention to the environment because they are considering reputational cost. And there are also many green standards and green barriers. If you do not meet environmental standards, Chinese products cannot be sold to other parts of the world. Thank you. And this is the end of our panel discussion. We are very sorry that Mr. Zhang Xuetao from China Financial Cooperation could not join us today. From CICC International, he could not join us today. So I want to thank all the panelists for your contribution.